What's happening, guys? Oxford King here, and in this Diablo 4 video, I'm going to walk you through my Spiritborn Rake build. Let's get started. First up is armor. Now, what I'm going to do here is walk you through the armor that you can use for a combination of unique and legendaries. And if you really want to push the character or this build a little further, I'm going to offer you a couple of the mythic unique options as well. What you're seeing on screen now is a combination of unique and legendary. Starting with the helmet here, I did go with the loyalties mantle because we are doing double Jaguar when it comes to the spirits. And so with this one here, I ended up doing the rune words of Tan-Q, which you see at the bottom there, where it says cast a non-channel core skill, and it's going to invoke Druid's Earthen Bulwark, which is a big key of this build, is Bulwark. Moving down to the chest piece, we're looking at the chest piece here with maximum life, dexterity. The +3 to Scourge you see is absolutely optional. You don't need that. I actually went back over to Vortex anyways. I don't really use Scourge right now, but having that +3 to Scourge is really nice. So you can go ahead and craft in whatever you can. As far as the tempers go, that lucky hit there to stun, not necessary. I just got it and stuck with it. So if you have that extra slot of whatever that is for lucky hits, just grab that for some crowd control. I like stun. The second one is going to be your +2 to maximum resolve stacks if you can get it. +1's fine. Try to get +2. When it comes to the aspect, we're rocking disobedience because my armor is pretty low right now when just standing still. So I did use this one here. Whenever you hit, you're going to gain up to 40% extra armor. I went ahead and slotted in the highest dexterity gems as well, so you can move up that dexterity even further. Now let's go down to the gloves. Again, here we're looking for maximum life. We're also looking for attack speed if you can get it, or you can craft it on. That'd be even better. And then we have here +5 to rake. You don't need that. You can also get +5 or plus whatever to your core skills or plus whatever to basic skills because of the weapon that I'm going to go over in a little bit. So any of those categories work. Doesn't have to be +5 or plus whatever to rake. It can be core, basic, or rake. Next up for the tempers, we're looking at barrier generation. And then the next one here is I went with basic attack damage. All the footage that you've been watching in this video has been with this temper of basic damage on here. But you can definitely play around with your overpower damage temper. You can play around with the critical strike damage temper as well. They all work. Now, when it comes to the aspect, we're doing Wild Claws, which if you don't know, Rake manifests a Spirit Jaguar, which also casts Rake, an additional Rake, at a random enemy, dealing 65% of the damage bonus, depending on how many of these levels up you have of that aspect. And when you fight a boss, it actually stacks up with you on the single target, so you're getting double damage. Now, I'm going to talk to you about this real quick. This right here is a very important aspect. If you have to replace one of your aspects because you have too many uniques or whatever, you need to keep this one in here because this right here literally pretty much doubles your damage. It's really nice. I took it off just to kind of test it out, and the damage kind of dropped significantly. I put this thing back on and boom, we were back in business. So this one's really, really good. Moving down to the pants, we have Sovereign Tazes of Interdiction for the aspect that is, and we have some dexterity here. I crafted on some maximum life, grabbed some armor, and then the tempers are going to be pretty much the same as far as defense goes. We're looking at barrier generation and maximum resolve. And as far as the aspect is, like I said earlier, interdiction, which gain 11% or however many percentage you have at the time of you watching this video, block chance per resolve. So we're going to be stacking up resolve, lots of block chance with this. And again here, I went ahead and slotted in the highest dexterity into the gear there. Moving down to the boots, I feel like these boots are a staple, especially in your Spiritborn builds. They're just too good. They're just too good. I love them. The Yin's Blessing. What more can I say here? You're going to be looking for a lot of the resistance to all elements. That solves pretty much a lot of your resistance issues anyway. That's the big reason why I have these boots. Moving down to the ever so popular Rod of Kepelek, if that's how you pronounce that. Try to get a GA if you can, 2, 3 GA or whatever. Try to get that if you can. I happen to land a critical strike damage, which is pretty awesome. And then when I was masterworking, I ended up getting maximum resources and then 54.4% chance for core skills to hit twice and then plus rate of velocity. So yeah, if you don't know what this is, most of you know what this weapon is. It breaks the game pretty much in my humble opinion for Spiritborn. But your core skill is now additionally a basic skill. It doesn't replace it. It's a core skill and a basic skill category. Okay, and it's free to cast, but it does a little bit less damage. Now, when cast at maximum vigor, your core skill consumes all vigor to return to full damage, right? And here's another number that you want to try to get to max. You see that number right there, that 3%? Try to get a weapon that has that as high as possible to that 3% increased critical strike damage for each point of vigor spent this way. This is huge. This is a big multiplier that you want. So look at that number the most when you're looking for your drops. These runes here are going to be your Pak Zan, I guess you can say that, which is going to be spend 800% of your maximum resource, and your next skill cast will be a guaranteed critical strike and overpower. And the thing is, with this, you're going to constantly, this is like almost an upkeep pretty much all the time. Whenever you attack, I think it's about 5 times, you're going to critically strike and overpower. This is where your attack speed comes in handy. If you have really, really fast attack speed, you can fill this up rather quickly, and your critical strikes and critical damage will come in. It'll hit really, really hard. You'll see the damage go down significantly. Another thing too is when we open up our stats here, when I'm standing still here in town, we all know that the stats don't really count here until you get out and start attacking things, right? Well, just standing here in town, my crit chance is 19.4. My critical damage is like 2,300. But when I'm attacking, when I'm actually in the battlefield, my crit chance jumps up to around 67% ballpark. But the crit damage goes up over 10,000. I've seen it. It's like 10,300. But it doesn't. It's hard for me to pull up the menu and attack at the same time to look at the stats. But it is there. I saw over 10,000. I was like, oh my goodness, this is wild. So with that rune, it's going to really help you chunk off the life even better. So I would recommend that one. But if you don't like going that route, there's plenty of other options that you can go with. I mean, you can go with like Concussive Stomp. You can even increase your life here in case you're using the Viscous one on the Paragon board. So the more life, the more barrier, the more hard you hit. So you can also go with that one. You can do the ultimate cooldown, but not really. I mean, that one's fine. Pestilent Swarm. The Iron Maiden is pretty good too for attack damage or counterattack damage, and it heals you when they die. In case you're early on and you're leveling and you're constantly dying, this one's really good for mapping and stuff. Another good one is the Rogue's Countering Concealment. This one's actually pretty neat here. I was playing around with this for a good solid 3 or 4 hours, and I felt like it was actually working. So if you have the Mythic body piece and you want that stealth to always trigger, you could try this one out. The stealth actually triggers every 6 seconds because there's a 6-second cooldown. And what happens is when you have this here, you'll attack and you'll see an eyeball logo, like an eye icon at the bottom of your screen. It triggers for about half a second. It's like super fast, but that's all you need. All you need is for it to trigger. And then when that triggers, this right here on the Mythic, that 566.1 damage on next attack after entering stealth, that will actually trigger when you do that. So if you don't like the guaranteed crit overpower stuff, I'd recommend trying out this Invoke the Rogue's Countering Concealment bit so you can go into stealth for like literally a split second, just enough to get you that benefit. But yeah, check that one out. Moving over to the amulet, we have the Vulgar Chain of the Moonrise. And this one here, I happen to get percentage of dexterity, which is super nice. We have some maximum life there, movement speed. I really, really love to have movement speed in my build, so I was looking for movement speed on my Ami. And then we went with maximum resolve stack for the first temper. And then again, like I mentioned before, the second temper here for the offense side was basic damage. Again, play around with overpower, critical strike damage, even vulnerable damage if you want to, or basic damage. I went with what you see on screen. When it comes to the aspect, like I said, we're using Moonrise, which if you didn't know, this one is big time. It's huge, gives you a lot of attack speed. Damaging an enemy with a basic skill grants you 4% attack speed for 10 seconds, stack them to 5 times. So as you can see here, you're getting 150% skill damage and 15% movement speed for 10 seconds. This one's also a big staple in this build. Moving over to the first ring here, we have the indecipherable Signet of Redirected Force. And here, I was looking for attack speed, I was looking for critical strike damage, and then the lucky hit chance. Now, this one here, I love this one here. This lucky hit chance says that we have a 64.9% chance to make enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds. I love this. If you don't want to get that lucky hit there, if you don't like that, definitely get the aspect where it does the Vampiric Curse, where it does do vulnerable to enemies, or you can always rock the glyph on the Paragon board called Exploit. The world's your oyster when it comes to making things vulnerable. I just so happen to like to put lucky hit on the rings, which frees up other slots, later in the build. That's why I went with this. +2 to Vigorous, completely optional. I just landed that on a temper and I kept it, which gets us some of our primary resource back for us, which is going to be huge for this build. And then finally, again, basic damage on that last temper. Like I mentioned before, play around with crit damage, play around with overpower, and vulnerable damage if you choose to do so. Finally, we have the redirected force for the aspect, which says the following: gain increased critical strike damage equal to a percentage of your block chance, which is huge. And then blocking actually doubles this bonus for 10 seconds. If you don't think this actually works, it actually does. If you unequip it and go do whatever pit or whatever content, you'll notice a drop in your damage. And when you equip this thing, boom, it comes right back. So I would recommend that you do this. Now, the gem here, I went with the second to the highest gem with the 8% resistance to all, actually on all the jewelry if you look off to the right side. So that makes sure that we're capped out on the resistances, especially in Torment 4. Moving down to the unique ring here, this one's extremely important. We are looking at the Ring of the Midnight Sun. This one here is a staple, and the reason we're doing this is because when you critically strike, you regain up to 50% of the vigor you've spent in the last 2 seconds. I happen to get max roll with this. And then you get the counterattack's passive effect. But that one right there is where you regain vigor, is extremely important. Obviously, you want to look at the masterworking. If you can do that, if you have the materials and the gold, definitely get these masterworks all the way up as quickly as possible. Now, when it comes to the mythic uniques, I did get me a Shakos here. There's no need for introductions for this helmet here. I just went with this one. Happened to temper on the maximum life, so that's awesome. Got a GA off of this as well, which was the cooldown reduction. This here significantly picked up my damage, as it does with any build. I mean, we all know what this is. The second one here is the new Shroud of False Death. At first, I wasn't really in love with this one, but it actually ended up being pretty awesome. If you don't know, what this does is it's going to give you not only the damage on next attack after entering stealth, which is really only one time, but I'm going to talk to you about this in a second. I think I found a way to manipulate this, and it seems to be working, but I'll talk to you about it here in a second. But more importantly, it gives you +1 to all passives, which is it's awesome. So you get +1 to everything on the tree with the passives part. So this is a big staple. How I got these two were not drops, actually. I've been trading a bunch of the runes, basically just crafting the runes. I didn't actually hardly trade any of them, to be honest with you. I traded a couple with some friends, but most of the time I was just gambling away at crafting the runes until I was able to get the right pieces I needed to go ahead and get these two mythic uniques. So I don't know about you guys, but killing the tormented bosses, they're not yielding much of anything with the drops here. So it's all been like crafting with this stuff. So if you guys having that problem with the drops, drop a comment. I'm serious, because I'm like, am I the only one not seeing these drops with the mythic uniques? So, but right here, these two mythic uniques definitely elevated the build significantly. So I was able to do like, tier or pit tier 90 and stuff with these two pieces. So definitely took a look at these when and if you can. Now, when it comes to that manipulation piece, I'm still testing this out, but a lot of the footage that you saw was me doing the following. Now check this out. You see that third bullet where it says damage to next attack after entering stealth mode? So basically with this piece of gear, you're already in stealth mode, right? After 2 seconds of not attacking. So your first hit, you're gonna get that big damage, but what happens after that? Because you don't really go into stealth anymore, right? So what I did is I equipped this rune here that invokes the rogue's countering concealment, which puts you into stealth mode. It makes you unstoppable, gives you dodge chance, movement speed, yada, 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 right? But the stealth mode bit is what I was looking for. And what I want to do is I'm going to take you to a striking dummy and show you what I mean. Now, the stealth comes up for like half a second, but that's all we need. We need to trigger that, and then we go right back into our attack. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So as you can see, we're in stealth mode now because of the Mythic, okay? But as soon as you attack, you go right out of, you know, that stealth mode, okay? So basically your first damage is going to be that big hitting damage. Now, what I want to show you here is whenever you attack the striking dummy here, any enemy here, I want you to pay attention to the icons at the bottom of the screen. You're going to briefly see an eyeball. It happened right there. If you look right above the claws, or the teeth rather, you're going to see the eyeball flash up for just a second. It doesn't come up for very long, but that's all we need. We only need, you see it comes up again right there. If someone can let me know if you've also known about this, drop a comment. I mean, I'm kind of finding this out on my own. I'm like, this is actually amazing. And when I did this, I noticed a significant bump in my damage. So like I mentioned before, when it comes to the Spirit Hull, we're rocking double Jaguar. Now, if you do not want the second Jaguar one, it's honestly no big deal. You can probably rock like the Gorilla. That way you have like maximum resolve stacks and you're unstoppable. I totally get it. It's a huge QOL thing. The Eagle thing, I mean, you could also do this as well. Get some of that extra critical strike chance as you're moving. That's also pretty good. I didn't really touch Centipede on the second animal. I do like having Jaguar though, because with this one, in case you are using the unique, right here, you want to definitely rock double Jaguar so you can use the Loyalty's Mantle, take advantage of that. It's huge. But I also like the fact that you get maximum ferocity and then you gain a stack of ferocity whenever you kill an enemy or you damage a boss. It's just kind of nice QOL. So the double Jaguar is something that I went with and it's been working pretty well for me. When it comes to the Mercenaries, now this one obviously is completely up to you, but the ones that I've been using that I feel like they've been benefiting my playstyle the most is Variana and Altkin. Variana's tree looks like the following. I went to the far left. So I did grab the one that had everything to do with attack speed up. I think it's awesome. So I did grab Hysteria, which gives you attack speed. And then I went ahead and grabbed Bloodthirst, which also gets you attack speed. And then finally Bloodlust, which is more attack speed. I just love it so much. I noticed it immediately as soon as I equipped Variana. As far as Altkin goes, I mean, the second reinforcement one, it's totally up to you. Honestly, the world's your oyster. I've been using Storm of Fire. It's probably not the best option, but I love it because the Storm of Fire actually rains down on bosses and packs, and it stays down on the ground for a pretty good while. So I kind of just stuck with it. I didn't really kind of play around. Once I saw Storm of Fire working, I'm like, yeah, this is awesome. What I linked it to was basically any skill in combat. I didn't really care what I pressed as long as it's activated. Does that make sense? So those are the two Mercenaries that I'm using. When it comes to the Elixir and the Incense, I do like to use the Elixir of Advantage 2 for the attack speed of 15% and lucky hit chance of 15%. Now for the Incense, now there's two that I bounce between. One is Chorus of War that increases all your stats by 40 and critical strike and overpower damage by 5%. There's that one. Another one that I like is Soothing Spices, which increases your resistances to all elements by 10%. But then more importantly is your maximum resistances to all elements by 1%. But it also gives you armor by 150. So this was kind of a jack of all trades, just, you know, no really damage on that one. So those are the two instances that I kind of bounce between. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at the skill tree. I did unequip the mythics because they were just giving us numbers that some of you may not be able to have access to. So now we're just looking strictly at uniques and legendary gear, no mythics, okay? So I went ahead and put in a point up here for Thrash, which I'm not even using. I moved down here and dumped in a lot of points to max for Rake, and then I moved up to Advantageous Rake. That way our cooldowns are coming down whenever you're using that skill. And then I also pumped 3 points into Follow Through because our skill is now a basic skill, so this is good damage. We looked at some Vigorous here. We also have points into Balanced Exertion, okay? The reason that this says 8 is because of tempering and all that stuff. I didn't pump points into it, just an FYI. As you can tell, the red line goes up to Balanced Exertion. Now, for this here, this is completely optional. You can either A, go with Vortex, or B, you can go with Scourge. They're both really, really awesome. I love them both. For QOL, I just so happen to like Vortex. You also get some damage out of this too whenever you use it. As an example here, it says Enhance Vortex. Casting Vortex increase the damage of the next skill cast by 20%, which is awesome. And then finally, we have Measured Vortex. While you have an active barrier, which is all the time, your Vortex does 300% additional damage, and it knocks down enemies for the crowd control. So I really, really love Vortex. All right, moving down to one of my favorite skills for Spiritborn is Ravager. It is absolutely amazing. Dump 5 points into this, and then move down to Measured Ravager. This one is the gap closer you see with all the content creators in their videos. Like everyone's going like zoom, zoom, go, go fast all the time. That's because of this right here. So make sure you get Measured Ravager. It is awesome. It's amazing. Moving over to the defenses, Armored Hide, I feel like is a big staple in Spiritborn builds. I got 1 point there, and I moved up to Reinforced Armored Hide as well. And then finally, we have the counter attack. You don't really need this, but what I was looking for was the passive effect of Reinforced counterattack. So if we could look at right here, you see where it says the bullet points at the bottom. Counterattack passively increases your critical strike damage by 6% for every close enemy up to 30%. I wanted that, so I grabbed 3 points. And also, it's really nice to have counterattack, especially when you're a pack of mobs or you have a bunch of projectiles coming at you. Pop this and you won't get hit. It's really awesome. It's a really, really good, oh crap moment. I want to get out of this and not die. You can pop that. It's pretty awesome. We have 1 point into Patient Guard off to the right, and I put in 3 into Auspicious because this one gets us our barrier up. Even with Bulwark on your bar, you still want this as well for that barrier uptime. Moving down here to this section here, which is going to be the potency skills. I actually, if you notice, I don't have any potency skills, but I did grab Resilient for some extra damage, casting a Gorilla skill, which in our case is Armored Hide. And when you do that, you're going to get some extra health for 10 seconds, which honestly, it's always up at all times. And then coming down here, because we're a Jaguar build, we went ahead and knocked out the 3 points into Potent and also 3 points into Furnace. This is going to be lots of damage uptime for your Jaguar skills, and also critical strike damage per stack of Ferocity. We have a lot of Ferocity, so critical strike damage, we're going to be coupled that as well. Good synergy there. Moving over to the ultimates here. The Hunter, I mean, let's be honest, it's like the best one. I do love the Gorilla. Actually, the Protector is pretty awesome. The Devourer is good too, but the Hunter is just so good. You can leap over walls. You can get out of situations, does a lot of damage. It gets you, you're basically your supremacy up. It's really good. So I put 3 points into the Hunter. Here we have 3 points in the Resolution, which casting an ultimate skill grants 15% increased damage to elites for 3 seconds. Then 1 right here into Spiritual Attunement, and then finally 3 into Supremacy. This right here is huge. So what this does is any enemies you kill while an ultimate skill is active grants a stack of Supremacy, each increasing your damage by 3% up to 30%. So when an ultimate skill ends, which is all the time, you gain 5 stacks of this. Okay, so you definitely want to get Supremacy. It's really nice. Now coming down here, now check this out. I've been playing around this a lot with the key passives. You can go with any of these 3. Absolutely your choice. Vital Strikes, Adaptive Stances, and even Prodigy's Tempo. All of these work very well. Now, for me and my testing, I found that Prodigy's Tempo and Adaptive Stances were both the better options of the 3. And the reason I went with Adaptive Stances is because I wanted attack speed like crazy. I also get the damage reduction from Gorilla. And then I was using Scourge, you would get 3% life per second. But then if you look at the bottom here, casting a skill of a different base spirit swaps the new bonus and then increases core stats by 50% for 5 seconds. This is big. I felt like having Adaptive Stances made the gameplay faster and smoother. That's just how I felt. But absolutely, you can go with Prodigy's Tempo, which makes a little bit more sense. Your cooldowns are always ready to go, all that stuff. But because we're using Rake, your cooldowns are also ready to go as well. Rake has a built-in cooldown mechanic. So I went with this one, and I feel like all of my skills are, honestly, they're ready to go to be used at all times. So I went with this one. Check it out, though. They're all pretty good. Paragon Board time. So what I did here is when you look at the starting board, the first glyph that I went with was Spirit. So go ahead and grab this one. You get a lot of damage to elites here, but you get a ton of critical strike damage. That's really what it is a critical strike damage. So lots of dexterity on the starter board here for Spirit. I went ahead and grabbed Prime. I also grabbed Tenacity, and then I went ahead and grabbed these 2 as well, Skillful, and I also grabbed Spiritual. If you don't have the points, you could probably skip some of these on the left side and just go up the right side. But I went ahead and grabbed all these, what you see on screen. So feel free to just pause the screen to kind of match what I have here. Moving up to the second board. The second board here I have, let me find the legendary to help you guys out. so we know what it is. This one is the Convergence board. You deal bonus damage equal to 20% of your 2 highest bonuses to damage types combined, up to 30% total. Now, when it comes to the glyph, the one I'm using here is Fitness. Lots of critical strike damage, as you see on the screen here. This is also one of those, every 5 dexterity, you get such and such critical strike damage. That's what I went with. We also rocked the Skillful rare node there, and we also rocked Spearhead there, okay? And then moving over to the right side of the screen, I grabbed Denial for resistance to all and some armor. And then we went up here to the Elementalist for non-physical damage. This is a fire build, so that makes sense for what we're doing. And then finally, we grabbed another non-physical damage right here and also attack speed, because we are doing fire damage like I mentioned. Coming over to the right here, this board here, we did use the Viscous Shield. And this one here, I don't know if it's still busted or not, but this one's you do 1% damage for each 3% of your maximum life you have as berry. So you want a lot of maximum life as much as you can, all right? So here I went with the rare node called Primal Ward, lots of critical strike damage and barrier generations, very, very important. And then over here, we grabbed Raptor for some critical strike damage as well, and fire damage, because we're using Wildfire. That's why you saw the fire damage on that rare node prior. So go ahead and grab this Wildfire as well. So what this does, it gives us a lot of fire damage. Damaging enemies with direct fire damage has up to 30% chance to reduce one of your active cooldowns. So there you go. This is another reason why you don't need the other the node in the skill tree before. That's why you don't need that one that reduces your cooldown, because when you have Wildfire, this also is helping you with your CDR. You get what I'm saying? So check out Wildfire. It's pretty awesome. Moving over to the next rare node here, we have Fearless. This is going to be damage while you have a barrier, and fire damage, dexterity. We have our barrier up at all times. And then down here, we have Bristle, which is damage reduction while you have a barrier. You're also doing some vulnerable damage as well. Moving over to the right here, the board that we grabbed here is going to be Sapping when you cast 3 Gorilla, Jaguar, Eagle, or Centipede skills with the same spirit in a row. In our case, in our example, it's Jaguar. It's going to restore Vigor and then deal 30% increased damage. That's huge for 5 seconds, which we're always doing. The upkeep is always there. Moving over to the right here, we grabbed Opportunist for some resource regeneration, and maximum resources. And then moving down here, we grabbed Resilience, which gives us resistances to all elements, a little bit of maximum life. And then go down a little bit further south here, we grab Spriteful for the attack speed, a little bit of dodge chance as well. Moving over here to the right side, we have Concentrated, which gives us a lot of damage and dexterity. And then this rare node here is Eager Prey for maximum resources and plus 10 to dex. And then for the sigil here, we grabbed Canny, which gives us a lot of non-physical damage per 5 intelligence that you choose to select. And then also it says non-physical damage increases all the non-physical damage it takes from you by 1% up to 10% for 15 seconds. Non-physical damage equals fire in our setup, so that one has wonderful synergy. For the 5th and final board, we did go with the Revealing one. Now, this 5th board, I tried looking at so many different board options. I sat here for probably a good 2 days rotating the 5th board in and out, in and out. I didn't know what to do here. So I ended up landing with Revealing, and I feel like my damage did go up. It was noticeable, so I stuck with it. But this one here is up to 30% chance to knock down vulnerable enemies, which is what we do all the time. And you deal 30% increased damage to crowd-controlled enemies. Okay, so I felt like this one was really, really beneficial. Now, we did grab the rare node called Haven, so we got some life and some armor. As you can see here, I don't have the extra 4% life because I'm lacking the intelligence. That's okay. Moving up to the north here, we have Grounded. Again, required dexterity. I'm missing some dexterity for that additional attack speed requirement, but this one's 2.5 attack speed and poison resistance, okay? Grab some of the magic nodes around it as well for the attack speed up. Moving up the board here, we have the other rare node, which if my cursor can work correctly, is Artifice, vulnerable damage and dexterity. Again, I'm lacking intelligence for the extra vulnerable damage there. Moving up to the north here, we have Venom Weaver, 70% damage to crowd-controlled enemies, plus 10 to dex. And then I also grabbed, I have more strength here for 35% damage to crowd-controlled enemies if the requirements are met. And finally, for the glyph, we're doing Hone. Now, this one is the 5 strength one. So every 5 strength, you'll get fill in the blank. And in our example here, it's the Jaguar damage. So we have Jaguar damage, critical strike damage, and then finally, it's dealing damage with your Jaguar skills, increases your critical strike chance by 1% for 6 seconds, up to 10%. Those are the glyphs that I went with. You guys pause the screen, check out the board and layout that I have. And if it works for you, awesome, drop a comment. Let me know what changes that you would make. I'm really curious to hear from you. Hope the guide helped, guys. Drop a comment on what you would change for this build. Thanks for watching.